The word anti-Semitism should not be used to describe Jewish persecutions before the end of the 19th century, when it first appeared in Germany. The various revolutions that took place in Europe benefited the Jews who were, for the most part, emancipated. Anti-Semitism is the political statement that denies the Jews the right to become regular citizens in their respective nations. From the 5th to the 20th century, Jews have been persecuted almost everywhere. The longest periods with no persecution may vary, but they never exceeded 200 years, with a constant closer to 100 years. An abundant literature describes the anti-Jewish nature of most of the main monotheist religions' leaders. Their hatred is most likely due to their retrospective fear that Judaism could have become the one and only religion during the first 4 centuries of the Christian era. Christianity won the monotheist battle against Judaism when Constantine, a pagan Roman emperor, became Christian. During the following 3 centuries, all the doctrines and rhetoric that would shape Middle Age anti-Jewish regulations and persecutions were put together. The Church's goal was to prevent pagans from becoming Jewish, and, therefore, to eliminate any Jewish influence. It is only when the rulers of countries needed the Jews that persecutions were halted. The Spanish Golden Era, that started in the 8th century and peaked during the 10th and 11th centuries, is a perfect example of this. Likewise, in the 16th century, when Polish kings, despite the local church opposition, favored the Jews to develop some unpopulated area and to form a middle class. The First Crusade in 1096 marks the beginning of a terrible era for the Jewish population in Western Europe, with massacres and torture taking place in almost every country. The York Massacre in 1290 started the quasi-elimination of any Jewish presence for centuries in England, and the same happened in France in 1394. In 1492, the Jews were ousted from Spain. It was also during the Middle Ages that some clerics started to spread the deadly rumors about the Jews that are still popular within some ethnic groups, including blood libel and host desecration. Jews in Western Europe never recovered from the persecutions of the Middle Ages, and until today never again represented more than 10% of the world Jewish population. 3 major developments took place in the last century. 2 resulted in the extinction of most of the Jewish population in Eastern Europe, the Holocaust and the Soviet Union's Aliyah. The latter resulted in the remarkable expansion of American Judaism. At a time when anti-Semitism is again on the rise and out in the open, and consequently many Jews in Western Europe, in France in particular, are contemplating a new departure, it is worth mentioning that the only continent where Jewish people were never subject to persecution is North America. Today, anti-Zionist propaganda and political parties sound like a rebirth of anti-Semitic literature, like La France Juive from Drummond, or the newspaper La Libre Parole, and political parties whose doctrines were based on Jew hatred. Anti-Semitism abated over time only when forced by socio-economic reasons. Conversely, during difficult economic times, Jews were always systematically stigmatized. The massive inflow of Arabic or Muslim populations in Western Europe is the new anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist vector in countries like France, Belgium, or England. With the current economic crisis, it is unfortunately very likely that Jews in these countries will be faced with distressing times ahead. The word anti